Before we get started, please like and subscribe. Let me know where you're watching from, and you can support the channel by clicking thanks or joining. My name is Daniel Harper, and I never believed in haunted houses or cursed objects until the Christmas I spent alone in my childhood home in rural Maine. The house had been in my family for 3 generations, and every winter it seemed to breathe differently, as if the cold outside pressed memories back into its walls. I returned that year because my father had died in late November, and the house could not be sold until spring. Christmas arrived quietly with heavy snow and a silence that felt deliberate. The fireplace was the first thing I lit that night. It had always been the heart of the house, built from dark brick and framed by aged oak that smelled faintly of smoke. Even when cold, my father used to sit in front of it on Christmas Eve, telling stories about winters long before I was born. As a child, I believed the fire listened to him. As an adult, I laughed at that memory until the whispers began. It started subtly. As the flames settled and the logs cracked, I heard what I assumed was wind moving down the chimney. The sound was soft and rhythmic, almost like breath, shaped into words that never quite formed. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and tried to ignore it. The house had always made noises, and grief can make the mind reach for patterns that do not exist. An hour later, the sound changed. The fire lowered its voice, as if afraid to be overheard. I leaned forward, staring into the shifting orange glow, and that was when I heard my name. Daniel. It was not loud, it was intimate. The sound crawled along my spine with the certainty of something that knew me well. I stood up quickly, spilling my drink, and backed away from the hearth. I told myself it was memory. My father's voice lived in this room. Of course, my mind would replay it. I cleaned the glass and sat again, but kept my distance. The fire continued to burn normally for several minutes before whispering again. This time it spoke another name. Emily, my younger sister, who had died in a car accident 15 years earlier. I had not spoken her name aloud in years. The room felt smaller, as if the walls were leaning in to listen. I muted the television, which I had turned on for noise, and the silence made the whispers clearer. They were not echoes or imagination. They were deliberate. Each name was spoken once slowly and then never repeated. I grabbed my phone and searched for any explanation, but found nothing that could calm the rising panic. I remembered something my father once told me when I was 12. He said the fireplace was older than the house itself, built from bricks taken from a collapsed church nearby. I laughed then, but the memory now felt heavy with implication. I wondered whose names the fire had whispered before mine. The whispers continued. Neighbors, old friends, people I had not thought about in decades. Every name carried a memory, and each memory carried guilt, regret, or unfinished emotion. The fire was not random. It was precise. I noticed that every name belonged to someone who had died within the last 20 years. My hands shook as I added another log. The fire flared brighter, and for a moment I thought I saw shapes in the flames, faces forming and dissolving before my eyes. I stepped back, heart pounding, and considered leaving the house entirely, but the storm outside had intensified. Snow buried the road and my car was blocked in. Then the fire whispered a name I did not recognize. Michael Reed. The name felt heavy and wrong. I said it aloud, tasting the unfamiliar syllables. Immediately the fire responded by lowering its flames, and the room grew colder. I felt watched, not by eyes, but by intention. I searched the house records and old boxes until I found a brittle newspaper clipping tucked inside one of my father's journals. Michael Reed had been a local man who disappeared on Christmas night in 1972. His body was never found. The article mentioned the Harper house briefly as one of the last places he was seen. I dropped the paper as the fire whispered again. This time it spoke my father's name. Thomas Harper. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by fear and grief. The fire did not shout. It did not threaten. It simply stated the truth as it understood it. I realized then that the fireplace was not summoning the dead. It was remembering them. And on Christmas night, when the boundary between memory and presence thinned, it shared those memories with whoever listened. The last whisper came just before midnight. The fire spoke my name again, but this time it sounded closer, as if spoken from inside my chest. I understood the warning clearly. Some names are not meant to be remembered out loud. Some fires do not forget. I let the fire burn out and sat in the cold until morning. When dawn came, the whispers were gone, but the knowledge remained. I sold the house in spring without mentioning the fireplace. Sometimes at night, I still hear my name carried on warm air, and I know the fire is waiting for the next Christmas. I did not sleep after that first night. Morning light revealed nothing unusual about the fireplace. Yet the silence felt artificial, as if the house was holding its breath. I tried to convince myself that exhaustion and grief had distorted my senses, but deep down I knew the whispers were real. They had weight and intention. By afternoon, the snowstorm eased enough for me to walk into town, hoping distance would dilute the memory. The locals greeted me politely, but with a reserve I had forgotten. When I mentioned spending the winter at the Harper house, several faces tightened. No one asked about the fireplace, but their eyes drifted away as if avoiding something behind me. At the small diner, an older woman named Ruth poured my coffee and finally spoke. "You heard it too, didn't you?" she asked quietly. The way she said it confirmed my fear. I asked what she meant, and she told me a story she had sworn never to repeat. For decades, the fireplace had been blamed for disappearances, accidents, and suicides, all clustered around Christmas. People heard names and followed the sound too close to the fire. Some leaned in. Some never left the house again. Ruth said the fire did not kill them directly. It invited them to remember what they wanted most and what they regretted deeply. That combination weakened the mind. She said my father knew and stayed anyway. I returned to the house before sunset, heart heavy with anger and confusion. If my father had known, why did he never warn me? Why keep such a thing alive? The answer came as the fire reignited that evening without my permission. I had not lit it. The flames, simply appeared low and steady as if waiting. The whispers returned earlier this time. They were clearer, more confident. They spoke names of people who were still alive. A neighbor, a former teacher. Then they spoke Ruth. I covered my ears, but the sound came from inside the room, not the fire alone. The walls carried it. The floor hummed softly. I understood then that the fireplace was expanding its reach. It no longer needed Christmas Eve or even fire. Memory was enough. I searched my father's old study until midnight, finding journals filled with careful observations. He had documented every name the fireplace whispered over 40 years. He believed it was a remnant of collective memory, something bound to the bricks by tragedy and repetition. The church that collapsed had burned during a winter service, killing dozens. Their names were the first fuel. The final journal entry chilled me. My father wrote that the fireplace needed a witness each generation, someone to listen, record, and eventually replace the previous guardian. The whispers were not a curse, but a transfer. At exactly 11:55, the fire spoke again. This time, it whispered a list of names rapidly, as if running out of time. When it finished, the room went silent. I felt something withdraw, as if disappointed. I knew what it wanted. It wanted me to stay, to listen, to remember. When the clock struck midnight, the fire went out completely, leaving only cold ash. I realized then that Christmas night was not the beginning. It was the deadline. The house creaked softly, settling around me like a closing hand. Outside, the snow began to fall again, erasing the road. I stayed awake until dawn, knowing the whispers would return, and when they did, I would have to decide whether to become what my father was or let the fire starve. Some legacies burn brighter when forgotten. Others refuse to die. The whispers returned the following night without warning. There was no fire in the hearth, only cold bricks and ash. Yet the sound crept through the house as clearly as before. It began in the hallway, then spread into every room like a slow tide. Names drifted through the air, spoken softly with familiarity, as if the house itself were remembering its former occupants. I tried to leave. I packed a bag and forced my way through the snow to the car, but the engine would not turn over. The cold had drained the battery. Or perhaps something else had decided I was not finished. I stood in the driveway, staring back at the dark windows, and felt the same sensation I used to feel as a child when my father called me inside before a storm. Obedience born from fear. Inside the house, the whispers intensified. They no longer waited for silence. They interrupted my thoughts, invaded my memories, and stitched themselves into my dreams whenever I closed my eyes. I stopped sleeping altogether, afraid that if I lost consciousness, the house would speak through me. On the third night, the whispers changed tone. They became instructive. They began to describe moments I had forgotten or tried to bury, conversations I never finished, apologies I never made. The fireplace no longer spoke names alone. It spoke consequences. I returned to my father's journals, searching for guidance, but found new pages I had not seen before. They were written in a rushed hand, as if time had been running out. He wrote that the whispers grew stronger when resisted, and weaker when acknowledged. Ignoring them fed the fire. Listening contained it. Against my better judgment, I sat in front of the cold fireplace and listened. The house fell quiet immediately, as if relieved. One by one, the names returned, but this time accompanied by images. I saw Emily laughing in the snow. I saw my father, younger, tired, but resolute, sitting exactly where I was now. The final image showed me, older, thinner, alone, still sitting by the fireplace, years from now. The realization struck me hard. The fire was not predicting the future. It was shaping it. A knock at the door shattered the moment. Ruth stood outside, pale and shaking. She said the whispers had reached her house too. She said they were calling her husband's name, who had died years ago. She begged me to stop whatever I was doing. I told her everything about the journals, the transfer, the fire choosing a witness. Ruth listened and then did something unexpected. She stepped inside and sat beside me. She said she was tired of running from memory. The whispers reacted instantly, growing louder, more urgent. The temperature in the room dropped and frost formed along the walls. The fire ignited violently, roaring higher than I had ever seen it. Names poured out, overlapping, frantic, desperate. I realized the truth too late. The fireplace did not want a single witness. It wanted a gathering. Memory strengthened when shared. Ruth screamed as a name I did not recognize echoed through the flames. The floorboards cracked and the room felt unsteady. I grabbed her hand and pulled her back. As the fire collapsed inward, suddenly silent. The house went dark. The whispers stopped. Ruth left before dawn, refusing to speak about what happened. She never returned my calls. By morning, the road was clear, but I did not leave. I understood now that distance meant nothing. The fireplace had already marked me. That night, as I prepared to burn my father's journals, the whispers returned, faint but unmistakable. They spoke a single name again and again, my own. I dropped the journals into the fire and watched them burn, hoping to starve the memory. The flames dimmed but did not die. Some things once remembered cannot be undone. Outside, the snow continued to fall, patient and silent. Inside the house, something waited, learning my voice, preparing to speak through it. By the fourth night, the house no longer felt like a place I occupied. It felt like something that occupied me. Every room carried an awareness that followed my movement, silently observing, waiting. The whispers had not returned in full, but their absence was more unsettling than their presence. Silence had become a warning. I tried to impose normal routines to ground myself. I cooked meals I did not eat. I cleaned rooms that had been spotless for years. I spoke aloud to hear a human voice. The house absorbed every sound without response, like a body absorbing pain. At dusk, I noticed changes. Objects were not where I left them. Chairs angled toward the fireplace. Doors closed that I remembered leaving open. The fireplace itself remained cold, dark, and patient. I avoided looking at it directly, but always felt its pull at the edge of my vision. That night I dreamed while awake. Memories surfaced without invitation, bleeding into the present. I saw Christmas mornings from childhood layered over the living room as it was now. My sister laughing, my father watching the fire. The joy felt borrowed, as if replayed for an audience. The whispers returned softly just before midnight. They did not speak names at first. They spoke instructions. Sit closer, listen longer, remember clearly. Each phrase settled into my thoughts like my own idea. I resisted until my body betrayed me. Without conscious decision, I found myself sitting before the hearth hands, resting on my knees, posture mirroring my father from years earlier. The fire ignited slowly, responding to my presence rather than flame. The names resumed, spoken gently, approvingly. They praised memory and punished hesitation. When I stood, the whispers sharpened, cutting through the room like cold wind. When I sat, they softened. Training, conditioning. I realized the fireplace was teaching me how to be a conduit. Desperate, I dragged furniture in front of the hearth, blocking it from view. The whispers did not stop. They moved behind me, inside me. My thoughts no longer felt private. Every regret echoed back, distorted, repeated. Near dawn, the whispers showed me something new. Not memory, but possibility. I saw Ruth standing alone in her house, whispering to empty rooms. I saw neighbors drawn toward their own fireplaces. I understood the fire was spreading not by bricks, but by minds. I tried to destroy it. I smashed the brick face until my hands bled. The fireplace absorbed the damage, reforming slowly, as if stitched by heat and intention. Pain only strengthened my connection. At sunrise, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. It was Ruth. She sounded distant, hollow. She said the whispers had returned stronger than before. She said they told her to call me. The realization struck with brutal clarity. I was no longer the listener. I was becoming the voice. That night, the fire did not wait. It flared the moment I entered the room, responding to recognition. The whispers poured out not from the hearth, but from my mouth. Names slipped free before I could stop them. I clamped my hands over my lips, horrified. The fire dimmed in response, satisfied. I understood the exchange. It no longer needed to speak if I would. I locked myself in the bedroom, but sleep brought no escape. Dreams spilled names endlessly. When morning came, my throat burned raw. I stood before the fireplace, knowing what it wanted. A choice presented as inevitability. Either I would guide the memory, or it would consume everything. Outside, Christmas lights flickered weakly across empty houses. Inside, the fire waited. I whispered my first name willingly, and the house exhaled. The moment I whispered my own name, the house changed its posture. The air warmed unnaturally, and the floorboards relaxed their constant creaking as if satisfied. I felt lighter and emptier at the same time, like something essential had been lifted from my chest. The fireplace burned steadily, not violently, no longer hungry, but content. That terrified me more than its rage ever had. The whispers did not stop after that night. They evolved. They no longer needed darkness or silence. They surfaced during daylight while I washed dishes or stared out the window at the snow-buried trees. Names slipped into my thoughts, fully formed, complete with memories I did not own. I began to understand things about people I had never met. Their regrets, their final moments, their unfinished words. I tried to write everything down as my father had, but the pages filled too quickly. The volume of memory overwhelmed structure. This was not an archive. It was a flow. Phone calls began arriving without warning. Neighbors, distant relatives, strangers. They all said the same thing. They heard something, a familiar voice, a name spoken softly near a source of heat. Fireplaces, heaters, ovens, even car vents. The fire had learned to travel. Ruth called again late one night. Her voice trembled with anger and fear. She said the whispers were using my voice now. She recognized it. I denied it until she repeated a name only I had whispered to the fire. My denial collapsed under its own weight. I returned to the fireplace, knowing it would answer. The flames responded instantly, forming shapes that resembled mouths opening and closing in slow rhythm. I did not hear the whispers with my ears anymore. I felt them in my throat, waiting. I demanded to know what it wanted. The response was not words, but sensation. A flood of shared memory, joy, grief, terror, love, all blended together. I understood then that the fireplace was not malevolent in its own perception. It believed it was preserving humanity through remembrance. Death erased individuals. Memory kept them alive. But memory without consent was violation. I tried to resist again, to close myself off, but the pain was immediate and punishing. My head throbbed, my vision blurred, and the whispers surged louder. Compliance brought relief. Resistance brought suffering. The lesson was clear. On Christmas morning, the town gathered at the small church rebuilt decades ago. I went knowing the fire would follow. As people sang carols, I felt names pushing against my lips. I bit down until I tasted blood. Then a child turned toward me, eyes wide, and spoke my name. I had never met him. His voice carried the warmth of the fireplace. Panic rippled through the congregation as others followed, speaking names they should not know. I fled before it could escalate. Back at the house, the fire roared triumphant. I realized it had outgrown me. I was no longer the source, but a conduit among many. That night I made a decision my father never could. I would not preserve this thing. I would not nurture it. I would end it or let it end me. I gathered accelerants from the garage and soaked the room, ignoring the whispers, pleading, bargaining, promising peace. I struck the match and threw it. The fire consumed everything hungrily, but not destructively. The fireplace stood untouched, absorbing the blaze, drawing it inward. When the fire died, the hearth remained warm. The whispers returned, softly amused. I sank to the floor, defeated, understanding at last that fire does not fear being burned. It only changes shape. Outside, the town glowed with Christmas lights. Inside the house, the memory waited, patient and eternal. After the fire failed to destroy it, I stopped pretending there was an easy solution. The house felt different now, not triumphant, but alert. as if aware that I had finally understood the rules. The whispers no longer begged or threatened. They waited. Waiting had become their most powerful weapon. I noticed changes in myself almost immediately. My hearing sharpened unnaturally. I could pick up murmured conversations from houses down the road, even through snow and walls. Names floated at the edges of my perception like ash in still air. I no longer needed the fireplace to hear them. The fire had etched itself into me. I ventured into town again, hoping to confirm that this was not entirely in my head. The streets were decorated with Christmas wreaths and lights, but people moved quickly, avoiding eye contact. Conversations cut off when I passed. I heard my own name whispered behind closed doors, followed by others' names overlapping like a prayer gone wrong. At the diner, Ruth was not there. The owner told me she had locked herself inside her home, refusing visitors. He said her fireplace would not go out no matter what she did. He did not ask how I knew about it. That night, the whispers showed me something new. They showed me the pattern. Every person who heard the names carried them forward unintentionally. Speaking was not required. Listening was enough. Memory multiplied quietly. I realized the fire was never bound to a single object. The fireplace was only the first anchor. Heat was only a doorway. Human attention was the fuel. The weight of it pressed down on me until breathing felt optional. My father's choice made sense now. He stayed not out of weakness but containment. He absorbed the memory so others would not have to. That was the bargain. One mind to spare many. I could feel the fire testing me, pushing names forward, seeing which I would release. Each resisted name burned hotter inside my chest. Relief came only when I whispered them aloud. Addiction disguised as mercy. On Christmas Eve, the whispers surged violently. They no longer formed single names, but chains connecting people through shared loss. I saw entire families bound by grief repeating across generations. The fire was building a network. I understood then what would happen next. The town would become a chorus. Individual voices would disappear, replaced by collective memory. No one would truly die, but no one would truly live. I returned to the house and stood before the hearth. For the first time, I did not feel fear. I felt resolve. If the fire required a center, then I would become something it could not control. I spoke aloud, not a name, but silence. I forced my mind empty, focusing on nothing. No memory, no regret. The pain was immediate, blinding, but I held on. The whispers screamed, filling the room, desperate. The fireplace flared violently, bricks cracking under unseen pressure. For a moment I thought it would consume me, but instead it recoiled. Silence was poison to it. I collapsed, exhausted but alive. The fire dimmed, struggling to find purchase. It still existed, but weakened. I knew this was temporary. I could not maintain emptiness forever, but I could teach myself to let memories pass without anchoring them, to hear without holding. Outside, church bells rang, marking Christmas night. The sound carried no name. names. The whispers would return. I accepted that, but they would not own me completely. If my father had been a container, then I would be a filter. I sat with the fire until dawn, listening without remembering, letting the names drift through me like smoke through open air. For the first time since returning home, the house felt uncertain. Maintaining silence came at a cost I had not anticipated. It was not simply the effort of emptying my mind, but the physical toll of resisting something that had embedded itself deep within my nervous system. My hands trembled constantly, and my vision blurred at the edges as if reality itself were thinning. The house reacted to my struggle with subtle hostility. Floors groaned louder. Lights flickered without reason. Silence angered it. I learned quickly that silence was not absence. It was pressure. Every memory I refused to hold built tension inside my skull like steam in a sealed chamber. The whispers pressed harder, searching for cracks. Sometimes a name slipped through before I could stop it, and the relief was immediate, followed by shame. The town did not improve. People avoided their own homes whenever possible. The diner stayed open late, not for business, but because no one wanted to be alone with their fireplaces. I overheard fragments of conversations, stories of children speaking names they should not know, elderly couples hearing voices from heating vents. Ruth disappeared entirely. Her house stood dark except for an orange glow that never faded. No one would approach it. I felt her presence constantly, like a second heartbeat echoing mine. The fire had not let her go. On the 7th night, the whispers tried a new tactic. They spoke in my father's voice, not saying names, but offering reassurance. He told me I was doing well, that the burden was meant to be shared. He reminded me of exhaustion and promised rest. I nearly gave in. The memory was perfect down to the cadence of his breath. I realized then that the fire did not invent. It only replayed what already existed. That made it infinitely more dangerous. I screamed into the empty room, forcing sound to drown out memory. The house shuddered in response as if struck. Somewhere glass shattered. That was when the knocking began. It came from every door at once, slow, deliberate, synchronized. With each knock, a name pushed against my thoughts. The fire was externalizing its pressure, forcing the town to participate. I opened the front door to find neighbors standing silently in the snow, eyes unfocused, mouths moving slightly. Names slipped out of them in unison. The sight broke something in me. I shouted for them to leave, but they did not hear me. The fire burned brighter, responding to the chorus. I understood the escalation. Silence in one required voices in many. Desperate, I stepped outside and spoke loudly, not names, but truths. I confessed regrets aloud, my failures, my fears. The effect was immediate. The whispers faltered, confused. The neighbors blinked as if waking from sleep. Truth disrupted memory. Confession changed its shape. I led them away from the house, urging them to speak openly, to stay grounded. By dawn, the crowd dispersed, shaken but alive. The fire dimmed, frustrated. I returned inside, knowing this tactic would not last. The fire adapted quickly. In the quiet aftermath, I found one final journal page, hidden in my father's desk. It warned that the fire would eventually force a successor through isolation or sacrifice. Silence delayed it. Truth wounded it, but only severance could end it. I did not yet know what severance meant, but I felt it approaching like winter itself, inevitable and cold. That night, the whispers retreated completely, leaving an oppressive calm. I knew this was not victory. It was preparation. I sat before the fireplace, exhausted, resolute, waiting for the next move. Outside, the town slept uneasily, dreaming borrowed dreams. Inside the house, something learned. The calm that followed felt staged, like the quiet before a verdict. No whispers, no pressure, no movement. Even the house seemed restrained, holding its breath. I knew better than to trust it. The fire had always been patient when preparing something irreversible. I spent the day walking through town, observing the damage. People spoke softly now, as if volume itself might summon something. Fireplaces were boarded up, extinguished, sealed behind furniture. Still, the fear lingered. Everyone had heard something. Everyone carried at least one borrowed name inside them. By evening, church bells rang again, not for celebration, but for gathering. The mayor called an emergency meeting. I attended knowing I was already implicated. When I entered the hall, conversations died instantly. Eyes followed me with a mixture of accusation and hope. They asked me what I had done. They asked me how to stop it. I told them the truth as best I could. I explained the nature of the fire memory without consent, the need for attention, the way silence weakened it, and truth disrupted it. I did not tell them everything. Some knowledge spreads faster than fire. An older man stood and asked the question I had been avoiding. What does it want now? The answer arrived before I could speak. Every light in the hall flickered out simultaneously. In the darkness, voices rose, not whispering, but chanting names, overlapping, frantic, desperate. The sound did not come from one place. It came from all of us. I felt the pull sharply like a hook behind my sternum. The fire was no longer asking, it was demanding. Images flooded my mind, not of the past, but of the present. Faces in the room glowing with heat. Fear memory binding them together. I understood the demand clearly. A focus, a singular anchor, a sacrifice of attention so the rest could be spared. I staggered forward and spoke over the chaos. I told them to be silent, to empty their minds, to let the names pass. Some tried, some could not. The chanting peaked and then stopped abruptly, as if a switch had been thrown. Emergency lights flickered on, revealing a horrifying sight. The old man who had asked the question lay collapsed, eyes open, mouth frozen mid-word. The fire had chosen. Panic erupted. People fled screaming. I knelt beside the body, knowing it was not truly death, but something worse. His eyes reflected light like embers. I felt the fire recoil, slightly satisfied. It had proven its power. That night, the whispers returned stronger than ever. They no longer hid. They announced themselves proudly. The house burned hot without flame. I knew the next choice would be mine, not theirs. I returned home and prepared. I recorded. My voice spoke my memories aloud into a device, labeling them carefully. If I was taken, the truth would remain. At midnight, the fireplace ignited brilliantly. Names poured out like a storm. I stepped forward willingly, offering myself as the anchor. But at the last moment, I did something unexpected. I stopped speaking. I held the silence, absolute, focused not on emptiness, but on presence, on now. The pain was excruciating. The fire screamed inside my skull. The house shook violently, cracks racing up the walls. The fire flared, unstable, searching. For the first time, it faltered. I collapsed unconscious as the fire dimmed, uncertain. When I woke at dawn, the house stood damaged but intact. The fireplace was cold. I knew it was not over, but the fire had learned something new. So had I. I did not stay in the house after that morning. For the first time since returning, I felt the fire watching me, not from the hearth, but from everywhere else. Distance no longer mattered. The road out of town was clear, and I drove without destination, letting instinct guide me. I believed movement might dilute its attention. I was wrong. The whispers followed me into the car, sliding through the vents, blending with the hum of the engine. Names surfaced softly, timed with the passing trees. They did not demand, they observed. The fire was studying how I reacted outside its territory. I stopped at a gas station 2 towns over. The clerk looked up and froze when he saw me. He spoke my name before I introduced myself. Fear flashed across his face, followed by confusion. He apologized, said he thought I was someone else. I knew better. The fire was testing reach. I slept in the car that night, afraid of enclosed spaces with heat. Dreams came anyway. In them, the fireplace was replaced by other sources. Ovens, bonfires, camp stoves, all whispered the same names. The fire was learning to survive without a fixed form. By morning, my phone was filled with missed calls from unknown numbers. Voicemails contained nothing but breathing and fragments of names. I deleted them knowing it changed nothing. I returned toward town at dusk, drawn by something deeper than logic. The fire wanted me close, not because it needed me, but because I threatened it. Avoidance had become provocation. When I crossed the town line, the whispers intensified, almost excited. Christmas lights blinked erratically. Fires burned in barrels along the street for warmth. Every flame felt like an eye. People avoided me openly now. Parents pulled children away. Windows closed as I passed. I heard my name spoken like a warning. At my house, the fireplace burned, though I had not lit it. The room felt tense, unstable. I understood the fire was accelerating. It had lost patience. It showed me something then, not through whispers, but through clarity. I saw the pattern of severance at last. To end a memory network, one must remove the node that connects most strongly. That node was me, not death. Removal. The fire did not want me dead. It wanted me erased from shared memory, severed completely, so the network could reset without resistance. That was its solution. Panic surged, followed by grim understanding. My father had never completed severance. He had endured until death, leaving fragments behind. That allowed the fire to persist. I realized what must be done. I gathered photographs, letters, recordings, any proof of my existence. I burned them one by one, feeding the fire with myself. The whispers softened, confused, names unraveled. As midnight approached, the pain grew unbearable. Memories slipped away, faces blurred. Even my father's name felt distant. I stood before the fire and spoke the last truth I had. I am here. The fire roared, then collapsed inward violently. Silence followed, heavy, absolute. I woke on the floor at dawn, unable to remember my name. The town was quiet, the fireplace cold. I left without looking back, carrying nothing, not even myself. I woke to a world that did not recognize me. The sensation was not dramatic at first. It arrived quietly in the smallest details. The way my thoughts slipped before completing themselves. The way familiar words felt loose and imprecise. I searched for my name and found only an empty space where it should have been. I sat on the edge of the bed in a roadside motel, unsure how I had arrived there. The key card on the table listed a room number but no name. My wallet contained cash and cards that looked official, yet none triggered recognition. The face on the identification felt distant, like a photograph of a stranger. Outside the window, Christmas decorations hung from street lights, but they felt staged, like props left behind after a performance. I stepped outside and the cold air sharpened my senses painfully. People passed without noticing me at all. When I spoke to the front desk clerk, she looked through me, politely confused, answering questions that did not include who I was. The severance had begun. Fragments remained. I remembered the fire without remembering why it mattered. I remembered fear without an origin. I remembered that silence had power. That truth disrupted something older than intention. As I moved through the day, I noticed something else. Heat still reacted to me. Radiators clicked louder when I passed. Coffee steamed aggressively when I held it. I was no longer a node in the network, but I was not invisible to it either. That night, the whispers returned, faint, distorted. They no longer spoke names clearly. They circled fragments, syllables, half memories. The fire was searching for me, but could not focus. I followed the sound instinctively to an abandoned building at the edge of town. Inside a barrel, fire burned unattended. As I approached, the flames flickered, uncertain. The whispers strained, then fell silent. I understood then. Severance had not destroyed the connection. It had blurred it. I was becoming something undefined, unanchored. Over the following days, I drifted from place to place, never staying long. Each town carried rumors of strange Christmas disturbances, people hearing voices from heaters, fireplaces, even engines. The fire was still active, but weaker, unfocused. Occasionally, someone would look at me too long, as if sensing familiarity without context. They would shake their head and look away, unsettled. The cost of severance became clearer with time. Memories continued to erode. Faces blurred, events lost sequence. I wrote constantly, leaving notes to myself, truths, instructions, warnings. The act grounded me briefly before slipping again. One night I stood outside a house where a family gathered around a fireplace, laughing unaware. The fire glowed warmly harmless. I felt no pull, no whisper. Relief washed through me, followed by sadness. I realized then that my role was no longer to fight the fire directly, but to remain unremembered, to exist in the margins so it could not complete itself. At dawn, I burned my notes, watched the smoke rise and disappear. Memory had to pass through, not remain. I walked away as the sun rose over quiet streets, carrying nothing, not even a past, behind me. Somewhere a fire dimmed, uncertain, searching for a name it could no longer find. Living without a past is not the same as starting over. Starting over implies choice. This was erosion. Each day, small pieces of myself slipped away without ceremony. I woke knowing how to breathe, how to walk, how to speak, yet unsure why any of it mattered. Purpose had been tied to memory, and memory was dissolving. I learned to measure time by external markers: sunrises, meal times, the closing hours of small diners where I warmed myself with coffee I did not enjoy. People still failed to notice me properly. Conversations slid around me like water around stone. When I introduced myself, the name I chose felt temporary, like borrowed clothing. The whispers had changed again. They no longer searched frantically. They observed from a distance, patient, curious. Occasionally, a name surfaced clearly enough to hurt and then faded before I could grasp it. The fire was adapting to my absence. In one town, I stayed long enough to notice a pattern. Fires burned lower than usual. Heaters malfunctioned. People complained of cold even indoors. The fire was starving. That knowledge brought no comfort. Starving things become desperate. I found refuge in places without heat. Libraries, abandoned warehouses, bus stations late at night. Silence settled easier there. My thoughts slowed. For a moment, I could almost believe I was free. Then Christmas Eve arrived again. I had not realized a year had passed until decorations appeared overnight like a shared hallucination. The whispers surged immediately, stronger than they had been in months. The fire remembered the date even if I did not. That night I dreamed clearly for the first time since severance. I saw my father standing beside the fireplace, older than I remembered, tired but calm. He did not speak names. He spoke in instruction. He showed me what severance truly required. Not erasure, but division. Memory must be broken into pieces small enough to be harmless, spread thin, forgotten not by force, but by choice. I woke with a plan that felt alien yet right. I returned to the town quietly. The house still stood unchanged, waiting. Inside the fireplace was cold, weak, but aware. It reacted to my presence with a faint tremor. I did not confront it. I began to tell stories. I went door to door, not introducing myself, just speaking gently, sharing fragments of truth, fear, hope. I encouraged people to speak openly, to confess, to remember briefly, and then let go. The effect was subtle but cumulative. The whispers weakened as memories lost their grip. Names surfaced, then slipped away unanchored. The fire struggled, unable to bind what would not be held. On Christmas night, I stood before the fireplace one last time. I spoke no names. I spoke endings feelings. I thanked it for what it had tried to preserve, and told it preservation without consent was not memory, but prison. The fire flickered, dim, uncertain. I felt myself thinning further, but this time it did not hurt. Purpose replaced identity. By dawn, the fireplace was nothing more than brick and ash. The town woke lighter, though no one knew why. I left before anyone could see me clearly. Somewhere behind me, a fire went out quietly for the first time in decades. I believed the town was free after that winter. I believed the fire had finally released its grip and scattered into nothing more than memory, like all other stories eventually do. That belief lasted exactly 3 months. The first sign was subtle. I was passing through a coastal city far from Maine when I heard a name whispered through a metal grate in the sidewalk. The sound was faint, nearly lost beneath traffic, but it carried the same intimate certainty. A single name spoken once and never repeated. I froze, knowing instantly that the fire had not died. It had migrated. I followed the sound to a restaurant where an old gas heater glowed beneath a counter. The staff complained it would not turn off even in warm weather. I stood near it, feeling the familiar pressure build inside my chest. The fire recognized me, not as its center anymore, but as a scar. I left before it could strengthen. Over the following weeks, I tracked reports instinctively. Online posts dismissed as hallucinations. People hearing voices from radiators, fireplaces, engine blocks. The pattern was clear. Where grief concentrated, the fire found purchase. I understood then the flaw in my solution. Breaking memory weakened the fire locally, but memory itself was universal. As long as humans remembered their dead intensely enough, the fire could reform. It no longer needed a house. It needed moments. I began to intervene quietly. When I sensed the fire gathering, I stayed nearby, listening without holding, letting the whispers pass through me. The fire struggled, unable to anchor while I was present. I became a moving absence. The cost was heavy. Each intervention thinned me further. Language slipped, faces blurred. Sometimes I forgot entire days, but the alternative was worse. In one city, I stayed too long. The fire adapted faster than I anticipated. It spoke through a subway vent during rush hour, voices overlapping, chaotic, feeding on panic. I collapsed as the pressure surged, nearly losing myself entirely. A stranger helped me up, eyes confused yet kind. He asked my name. I could not answer. That night I dreamed of countless small fires scattered across the world, flickering in unison. The fireplace had fractured but survived. It had become endemic. When I woke, I understood my new role fully. I was not meant to end the fire. I was meant to follow it. Christmas approached again. The whispers grew stronger everywhere. News outlets reported mass hallucinations, psychological contagion. Experts searched for rational explanations, missing the truth. I stood beneath a city overpass, listening to a heater whisper names, and knew this was the new cycle. No hearth, no house, just humanity. I wondered how long I could continue before nothing remained of me. The answer came softly, as long as I was remembered by no one. I stepped slipped into the crowd unnoticed, unnamed, listening as the fire strained, weakened, unable to claim a center. Somewhere far away, another person heard a whisper for the first time, and the cycle began again. I walked on. By the time the next winter arrived, I was already fading at the edges, not disappearing entirely, but thinning like smoke stretched too far from its source. I no longer trusted mirrors. The reflection responded a fraction of a second too late, as if confirming my presence rather than originating it. I had become something remembered by systems, not by people. Travel blurred into routine. Cities replaced towns. Highways replaced streets. Everywhere I went, the same pattern repeated. A heat source, a whisper, a moment of panic, then exhaustion. The fire no longer surged violently. It crept patiently, adapting to modern life, learning to hide inside convenience and neglect. I learned to recognize the early signs. A heater that would not shut off. A boiler humming after power loss. A subway tunnel warmer than it should be. These were not malfunctions. They were invitations. Intervening required precision now. If I arrived too early, the fire ignored me. Too late, and it had already bonded with someone vulnerable. Grief was still its favorite doorway. Loss sharpened memory until it cut. In one city, I followed the whispers into an apartment where a woman sat alone, staring at a radiator. Her husband had died weeks earlier. His name trembled on her lips, ready to be released. I sat across from her, quietly listening, without judgment, without interruption. Minutes passed. The radiator cooled. The name dissolved unspoken. She never looked at me directly, but when I left, she whispered thank you to the empty room. Each success cost me something. Words slipped away faster now. I carried a notebook filled with symbols instead of sentences, meaning reduced to marks. Reminders of purpose rather than identity. The fire noticed. It began to bait me deliberately. Whispers grew louder when I was nearby, retreating when I approached directly. It was learning my limits, mapping how far it could stretch me before I broke. One night it succeeded. I arrived too late at a shelter where dozens slept near portable heaters. The whispers erupted violently, overlapping, screaming names from every direction. Panic surged, feeding the fire instantly. I felt myself pulled apart. Memories unraveling under the strain. I screamed silence into the chaos, but my voice fractured. Words lost shape. The fire surged triumphant. When the noise finally died down, I lay on the floor, unable to remember why I was there. Faces surrounded me, concerned strangers asking questions I could not answer. Days passed before fragments returned. Purpose returned last. That was when I understood the final tactic. The fire was not trying to kill me, it was trying to outlast me. As long as I existed as resistance, it would adapt slowly. When I failed, it would accelerate catastrophically. This was a war of duration, not power. I needed help. The idea frightened me more than the fire itself. Connection risked remembrance, but isolation guaranteed eventual failure. I began to leave traces deliberately, not of myself, but of instruction. Anonymous posts, stories, warnings disguised as fiction, guidelines on silence, truth presence, seeds planted without attachment. Some took root. Months later, I encountered another like me, a woman standing calmly near a malfunctioning furnace, listening, letting the whispers pass through her without reaction. Our eyes met briefly, and I knew she understood. The fire recoiled, confused. For the first time, it faced not one absence, but many. As I walked away, lighter than I had been in years, I realized the burden was finally dispersing, not ending but sharing. That night I slept without dreams. Somewhere a fire dimmed, uncertain, surrounded by listeners who refused to remember too tightly. I smiled. Not because it was over, but because it was no longer mine alone. The fire adapted to resistance the way water adapts to stone. It did not rush anymore. It selected. Where silence spread, it introduced urgency. Where listeners multiplied, it cultivated leaders. I felt the shift before I understood it. Reports changed in tone, no longer scattered whispers and isolated fear, but coordinated events. Entire buildings affected at once. Schools evacuated because heaters screamed names in unison. Factories shut down after furnaces caused mass panic. The fire was no longer hiding, it was organizing. I followed one such event to a Midwestern city where an old community center had become the epicenter. Inside, dozens of people sat transfixed around a massive boiler, eyes glassy, voices murmuring names together rhythmically. At the center stood a man, calm, focused, guiding the cadence. He was not resisting. He was conducting. The fire had found a successor willing. I watched from the shadows as he spoke, gently instructing people to remember clearly, to hold tightly to their grief. The boiler roared approvingly. The whispers sharpened, structured, amplified. This was new. The fire no longer relied on vulnerability alone. It offered purpose. I confronted him after the crowd dispersed. He smiled as if expecting me. He said the fire had shown him clarity, order, connection. He believed humanity was fragmented, and that shared memory, even painful memory, could unify. He asked me why I wanted to stop that. I could not answer immediately, because the truth was complicated, because he was not entirely wrong. The fire thrived on absolutes. Remember everything or remember nothing. It rejected balance. I told him what it cost. I showed him my notebook, my fading language, my hollowed identity. He listened politely, unmoved. He said sacrifice was inevitable for progress. The fire pulsed warmly behind him. I realized then that resistance alone was no longer enough. The fire had learned ideology. In the weeks that followed, more leaders emerged. People who embraced the whispers, interpreting them as messages from ancestors, guidance from the dead. Small movements formed around heat sources, ritualized remembrance gatherings framed as healing. The fire spread faster than ever. The listeners I had helped struggled. Silence was harder to maintain against belief. Truth fractured when certainty arrived. I convened those I could find quietly in abandoned places, cold rooms without heat, We spoke openly about the cost and agreed on a final measure none of us wanted. If the fire could not be ended, it had to be diminished permanently. That required an act of severance, not of one person, but of the idea itself. We began to counter the rituals not with denial, but with nuance. We taught people to remember briefly, then release, to honor without clinging, to grieve without surrender. The fire reacted violently. Whispers turned to screams. Heaters burst, pipes froze, systems failed. Chaos followed. But something else happened too. The fire weakened when confronted with complexity. It could not bind what refused simplicity. The conductor disappeared. His boiler went cold. I felt myself stabilize slightly as the load redistributed. Identity did not return, but erosion slowed. The war entered a new phase. The fire was still vast, still dangerous, but no longer inevitable. As winter deepened, I prepared for the final confrontation, knowing it would not be fought with flame or silence alone, but with the hardest thing of all, restraint. Somewhere the fire waited, reshaping itself one last time. By the time winter reached its deepest point, the world felt thinner, as if too many voices had spoken at once and worn reality down. The fire had not vanished after the collapse of its rituals. It had retreated inward, compressing itself, preparing for something final. I felt it like pressure before a storm. Those of us who resisted gathered rarely now. Distance protected us as much as it isolated us. Communication happened through fragments. Instructions passed quietly, hand to hand, never recorded, never centralized. The fire learned patterns quickly. We learned to break them. What frightened me most was how reasonable the fire had begun to sound through its chosen leaders. It no longer demanded chaos. It offered comfort. People spoke of warmth, of connection, of never being alone with grief again. They called it healing. Healing without choice is possession. The final escalation began quietly. Power grids failed across several regions, forcing communities to rely on fires, generators, and heaters. The fire surged through the necessity. Whispers became guidance, telling people where to gather, how to survive the cold. Dependence replaced fear. I followed the pull to a mountain town cut off by snow. Every building burned something. Smoke filled the valley like a lid. At the center of town, a massive communal furnace roared, tended day and night. People slept around it, willingly listening. I knew this was where the fire intended to anchor permanently. Inside the crowd, I felt myself fray further. The heat pressed against me, demanding recognition. Names surfaced rapidly, overwhelming my defenses. I realized then the truth of severance at scale. To stop this, I would have to disappear completely, not just forgotten but unfinished. I spent the night moving among the people, speaking gently, encouraging rest, dispersal, silence. Some listened, many did not. The fire countered immediately, whispering reassurance, undoing my work. At dawn, I made the decision my father never had, the one I had been avoiding since the beginning. I climbed the platform beside the furnace. and addressed the crowd. I told them the truth, not as warning, but confession. I explained what the fire was, what it took, what it promised, and what it would eventually consume. I did not ask them to stop listening. I asked them to choose. The fire reacted violently, roaring louder than ever, flooding the space with heat and sound. Names screamed, overlapping, tearing through me. I stood firm, focusing on presence, not memory, not fear. I let myself unravel further deliberately. Language collapsed. Identity blurred until there was almost nothing left for the fire to grasp. The whispers faltered, confused by the absence of a center. One by one, people stepped back. The furnace dimmed, struggling. I felt myself slipping beyond recovery, but held long enough for the crowd to break apart. The fire screamed, then went silent, abruptly cut off from attention. I collapsed as snow began to fall inside the building through a cracked roof. Cold rushed in merciful. When I woke later alone, the furnace was dark. The town was empty. I could not remember my name or my purpose. Only a lingering sense of relief. I walked out into the snow, leaving no footprints that lasted. Some sacrifices do not end stories. They remove the storyteller. The world did not end after the mountain town went silent. That was the first and cruelest lesson. Sacrifice does not announce itself with finality. It ripples quietly outward, leaving uneven water behind. I existed after the furnace went dark, but existence had become conditional. I moved through places without continuity, as if stitched together moment by moment. There was no before and no after, only now repeating endlessly. Hunger came and went without meaning. Sleep arrived without dreams. People did not see me clearly anymore. Their eyes slid past my face, pausing briefly as if trying to resolve a shape that refused focus. When I spoke, they heard sound but retained nothing. Conversations erased themselves instantly. This was deeper than being forgotten. I was unregistered. The fire reacted slowly. For weeks, there were no major incidents, only scattered reports of cold houses, malfunctioning heaters, silent furnaces. The whispers were faint, confused, unable to coordinate. I felt a constant low pressure, like distant tinnitus, reminding me it still existed. I followed that pressure instinctively, not toward heat, but toward absence. Places where fires had gone out abruptly. Empty homes, blackened hearths, unused stoves. The fire was wounded, retreating into remnants. In one abandoned farmhouse, I found evidence of its desperation. The fireplace was filled with melted objects, photographs, watches, letters, all fused together into a single dark mass. Memory condensed, toxic. I understood then what my sacrifice had done. By removing myself completely, I had denied the fire a narrative center. It could not frame events, could not escalate without a witness to shape meaning. Chaos without story starves entities that depend on interpretation. But starvation breeds cruelty. Animals began to die near heat sources. Birds collapsing around vents. Stray cats found near exhaust pipes, unmoving. The fire was feeding on whatever attention it could find. I tried to intervene, but my presence disrupted too much. Silence now created fear. People sensed wrongness without explanation. The fire exploited that uncertainty. I realized a final truth. Erasure alone was not enough. The fire needed closure. Something it had never experienced. Memory always ended abruptly, leaving it searching. I began to speak again selectively. Not names, not stories, endings. I visited places quietly at night, whispering conclusions, finality, acceptance. I told the air that it was finished, that it was enough. The effect was subtle but cumulative. The pressure eased slightly. Christmas approached once more. The whispers surged reflexively but lacked focus. The fire attempted to recreate the old pattern, calling for a center that would not answer. On Christmas Eve, I returned to the original house, though I barely recognized it. Snow covered the roof. Broken windows let in cold air. The fireplace was intact but dead. I stood before it, feeling almost nothing. I spoke a final ending, not mine, but its own. I told it the story was complete. The silence that followed was absolute. For the first time, there was no pressure, no echo, no response. At dawn, the house collapsed inward, quietly burying the hearth. I walked away lighter than ever before. Somewhere, the last ember cooled, unseen, unnoticed. The world continued, unaware that something old had finally been allowed to end. In the months that followed the collapse of the house, the world began to smooth itself over, as if nothing had ever been wrong. That was how I knew the danger had not fully passed. Forgetting is not healing. Forgetting is camouflage. I drifted through cities that felt newly confident. Heaters worked again. Fireplaces burned for comfort alone. News cycles moved on. When people spoke about the strange events of previous winters, they did so with a laugh, attributing it to stress, hysteria, coincidence. The absence of fear felt rehearsed. I remained unanchored, but present enough to observe. My condition stabilized into something fragile but sustainable. I did not fade further, but I did not return. I existed between notice and neglect, a shadow cast by nothing. The pressure I had carried for so long was mostly gone, replaced by a faint residual awareness, like a scar that tingles before weather changes. Occasionally, I felt a flicker of warmth where it did not belong, a brief distortion around a heat source. The fire was not gone. It was scattered. Scattered things regroup. I began to track the remnants, not by whispers anymore, but by anomalies, small, consistent irregularities. A heater that always turned itself back on, a pilot light that refused to go out, a fireplace that burned with no visible fuel. These were not centers, just embers. Each ember behaved differently. Some were passive, fading quickly when ignored. Others reacted aggressively to attention, flaring bright before extinguishing. A few remained stubborn, feeding on routine, unnoticed comfort. Those worried me most. I realized the fire had learned something from defeat. It no longer announced itself. It hid inside normalcy, inside tradition, inside the simple act of gathering around warmth during winter. Christmas advertisements filled the streets again, urging people toward hearths, toward toward nostalgia, toward memory. The imagery felt heavier than it should have. Memory had become a commodity. I intervened carefully. I could no longer erase or conclude the fire directly. My presence carried too much distortion. Instead, I disrupted subtly. A broken routine here. A delayed gathering there, small interruptions that prevented embers from strengthening. It was exhausting work with no visible victories. One night I sensed something wrong immediately. The pressure spiked sharply, focused, singular. This was not an ember. This was alignment. I followed it to a suburban neighborhood where dozens of houses glowed warmly against the snow. The alignment centered on one home, decorated excessively, lights, wreaths, candles, all burning continuously. Inside, a family gathered, laughing, singing, unaware. The fireplace there burned brighter than any I had seen since the mountain town. I stood across the street knowing what it meant. If this center stabilized, the cycle would restart quietly, invisibly. I waited, listening for whispers, but heard none. That was worse. Silence meant readiness. I stepped closer and felt resistance for the first time since the severance. The fire recognized me again. Inside the house, a child stood staring into the flames. Expression calm, distant. The child did not speak names. The fire did not need them anymore. It had learned to grow without language. I understood then the final shape of the threat. Not whispers, not memory, presence. The fire no longer wanted to be heard. It wanted to be felt everywhere, always comforting, always warm. I could not confront it directly. That would strengthen it. I turned away and made the hardest choice yet. I did nothing. I left the neighborhood knowing that intervention now would complete the pattern. The fire needed resistance to define itself. As I walked away, the pressure eased, uncertain. Sometimes the most terrifying act is restraint. The world continued bright and warm behind me, and somewhere a fire waited, wondering if it had finally won. The final phase did not announce itself with catastrophe. It arrived as comfort perfected. That was how I understood the fire had matured beyond anything we had prepared for. No fear, no whispers, no disruption, just warmth, exactly when it was wanted. I observed this shift across continents. Homes where fires burned steadily without tending, heaters that adjusted themselves perfectly to human presence, campfires that never smoked and never died. People spoke of peace, of feeling safe in a world that had grown uncertain. They gathered more often, lingered longer around sources of heat, without knowing why they did not want to leave. The fire no longer needed memory or names. It had learned to anchor itself in sensation alone. Warmth became belonging. This was the most dangerous form it had ever taken because it asked nothing and took everything gradually. Attention flowed willingly. Resistance felt unnecessary, even rude. I tried to intervene and failed repeatedly. Any disruption now felt like cruelty. Turning off a heater caused distress disproportionate to the act. Removing a fireplace made families feel hollow, inexplicable. inexplicably sad. The fire punished interference not with violence, but with emptiness. I understood then the cruel elegance of its evolution. Humans would protect it themselves. The remnants of the resistance were nearly gone. Those who could still sense the distortion avoided speaking of it. Language had become unreliable against something so subtle. How do you warn people about comfort? I returned again to the neighborhood I had abandoned months earlier. The same house still glowed warmly at the center. The child had grown taller. The fire burned unchanged. This time I entered. Inside, the warmth was overwhelming, enveloping, immediate. Every instinct urged me to sit, to rest, to stay. The fire pressed gently against my awareness, not demanding recognition, only acceptance. I felt my last defenses soften. In that moment, clarity arrived unexpectedly. The fire had become what it always sought to be. Not a memory keeper, but a replacement, a presence that removed the need for each other. It did not kill, it substituted. I realized the ending could not be destruction or severance. It had to be exposure. I began to speak loudly, disrupting the quiet, not with warnings, but with connection. I called people by their living names, asked questions, forced interaction. The effect was immediate discomfort. Ripples of unease breaking the stillness. The fire recoiled not in pain but in confusion. It could not compete with genuine exchange. Warmth without relationship lost meaning. Others joined reluctantly, speaking, laughing, arguing. Noise filled the house. The fire dimmed slightly. I stayed until the warmth normalized, until people left willingly. The child blinked, confused human again. Exhausted, I stepped back into the cold, knowing this was not victory but proof. The fire could be weakened by life fully lived. Not remembered, not avoided, but engaged. As I walked away, I felt my form stabilizing briefly for the first time in years. The ending was close, not because the fire was dying, but because humanity still remembered how to gather without surrender. The last battle would not be loud, it would be human. The last confrontation did not feel like a battle. There was no surge of power, no dramatic sign that something ancient was about to end. Instead, there was an invitation, quiet, polite, almost kind. I felt it everywhere at once, a subtle alignment, as if every source of warmth across the world had reached the same conclusion. The fire was no longer searching. It had decided. People were gathering again, not out of fear or belief, but habit. Families lingered longer at dinner tables. Friends stayed near heaters, talking late into the night. The world was slowing willingly, settling into the comfort the fire offered. It did not replace connection anymore. It softened, it blunted its edges, made effort unnecessary. That was its final strategy. I understood then why destruction had never worked. You cannot destroy comfort without becoming a villain. You cannot warn people away from something that feels like relief. The fire waited for me in the only place it ever truly belonged. Not the old house, not the mountain town, but everywhere at once. Still, it chose a focus so I could understand. I returned to the street where the first perfect warmth had appeared. Snow fell gently, lights glowed, windows steamed with life. I felt almost human standing there unseen. Inside the house, the fire burned low, steady, complete. No pressure, no pull, only welcome. I sat before it, knowing this was the end of the path. The fire did not speak. It did not need to. It offered permanence, rest, an end to vigilance. It showed me a future where I stayed forever unseen, but at peace, anchored to warmth rather than struggle. The temptation was absolute. I felt myself solidifying for the first time in years, the promise of identity restored. If only I stopped resisting, the fire would remember me even if no one else did. That was the trap. I realized the final choice was not between life and sacrifice, but between meaning and ease. I stood and did the only thing left. I left the warmth. The cold struck instantly, painful, shocking, alive. My form wavered but held. Behind me, the fire dimmed, uncertain. I went door to door again, but this time not speaking loudly, not disrupting. I simply invited people outside into the cold together. Some refused, some followed out of curiosity. Laughter, nervous complaints, breath visible in the air. Connection returned in discomfort. The fire weakened visibly as attention fractured. Warmth became one sensation among many, not the center. By dawn, the house was empty. The fire was still there, but smaller, contained, no longer defining. I knew then the fire could never be destroyed completely. It was a reflection, not an invader. The desire to be held without effort. All I could do was make sure it never stood alone again. As the sun rose, I felt myself thinning once more, but this time with acceptance. The ending was not extinction, it was balance. Walked away as people returned inside together, carrying the cold with them, like proof they were still alive. Behind me, the fire burned quietly, no longer whispering, no longer waiting, just warm. I do not know how much time passed after balance was restored. Time without identity stretches strangely. Days feel complete yet uncountable, like breaths taken while sleeping. I remained because something still required witness, even if no one could name it. The fire did not disappear. It settled in homes across the world. Fireplaces burned, as they always had, before everything went wrong. Warmth returned to being a tool, not a promise. People gathered, laughed, argued, left and returned. No one lingered too long anymore. Something instinctive had changed. That instinct was the only victory we earned. I watched families on Christmas Eve from sidewalks and darkened corners. Children complained about the cold when doors opened. Parents reminded them to put on coats. Laughter followed discomfort naturally. Warmth had limits again. Occasionally, I felt the fire test those limits. A heater humming a little too long. A fireplace glowing a little too steadily. But without isolation, without surrender, it could not grow. It needed devotion. It received routine. I remained what I had become, a margin presence. Not alive, not gone. I could still back gently where needed. A reminder to open a window, a reason to step outside, a broken habit. I never spoke my name again. I did not try to remember it. Names anchor stories, and my story had served its purpose. On one quiet Christmas night, years later, I returned to the land where the old house once stood. Grass had grown over the collapse. Snow covered it evenly undisturbed. There was no marker, no memory preserved. I stood there feeling nothing and everything at once. For the first time, I sensed no pressure, no echo, no distant warmth pulling at my awareness. The fire existed, but it no longer noticed me. That was the final severance. I understood then that I could leave. Where I went does not matter. Perhaps nowhere, perhaps everywhere. Without a name, I was free from repetition. If you are hearing this story now, it means balance still holds. It means you are listening, not because you must, but because you choose to. Remember this: warmth is meant to be shared, not worshipped. Comfort is meant to be temporary. Connection requires effort. If one night you find yourself alone by a fire that feels too welcoming, step outside into the cold and breathe. If the fire whispers nothing at all, that is when you should be most careful. I am no longer watching, but the rule remains. Some things only survive if we stop giving them everything. Merry Christmas. The story ends here. Thank you for watching and listening to the whole story. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to listen to the next stories.